You are watching Access LaPorte County Channel 97. Coming up next is the October 30th meeting for the Long Beach Town Council Workshop. You can find more information for this meeting by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Welcome, everyone, to the Lakeshore Drive Road Improvement Project Workshop. We're here tonight because it's finally time to repave Lakeshore Drive. We have the engineers here from Haas and Associates. We have Ryan Laughlin and Sam. They're going to give us a PowerPoint presentation. And after that, we'll have questions, comments, limited to 2 minutes. Keep in mind, this is all just in the planning stages, so the very few answers to any questions because no plans have been made at this point. So I will turn it over to Sam and Ryan from Haas Associates. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Joy. So yeah, we're here to talk about Lakeshore Drive road improvement. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the, can you hear me better that way? Okay. So we're here to talk about the Lakeshore Drive road improvement project and renewing the pavement, improving safety and sharing the road. So without further ado, we'll just jump right in here, kind of give you an overview of how the presentation will go. We just kind of want to talk a little bit about the project overview and the goals. Then we want to just briefly touch on the draft report titled Evaluation of Conceptual Roadway Improvements that's been posted to the public website, and some of you here maybe have read through that. So we just want to touch on what that is and what that isn't. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of in some engineering terms, kind of what the existing conditions of the roadway are at this point. And then we'll get into some more of the technical kind of planning proposal kind of things that will guide the design as we move forward. So some technical standards, pavement improvement options that there are available to the town, and then functional improvement options as well. And then we'll kind of back out of those details and think about this a little bit more holistically in terms of the project cost and the timeline for the project. And then, as Joy mentioned, we'll have an opportunity for people to provide their feedback and input and so forth. So with that, we'll just kind of get into it here. So the project location, obviously Lakeshore Drive here in the town of Long Beach. It's going to extend from approximately stop 13 to stop 31, a little bit on either side of that. As well, it ends up being about 2.35 miles of roadway. So what are the project goals here? I think one of the primary goals for certainly on this project is to improve the road quality and durability, as we'll talk about next. The road has degraded in quality over the years, and it's definitely in need of improvement there. So that's kind of where this all starts. Going right along with that is the need to improve drainage along the road in certain areas. Localized ponding and things are prevalent out there all along the road. So that can affect the quality and durability and longevity of the road as well. So it makes sense to fix those at this time. And then also anytime we're doing a project of this scale, definitely makes sense to take a look at improving safety and functionality for not only the drivers on the road, but also the other users of the road. VRUs, which are vulnerable road users. So that would include basically anybody that's not in a vehicle, so pedestrians and bicyclists. So with improving the safety and the functionality of the road, you kind of want to, especially in this context of this road and in this community, you want to at least take an attempt at achieving a complete streets kind of approach, which is basically just designing the road corridor for all the users that could use it, not just motorists. So we want to kind of provide some safe spaces for vulnerable road users. I don't think sidewalks is probably in the cards for this, but we can still accommodate them, and we'll talk about that as we go. We also want to increase driver visibility and awareness, control vehicle speeds. Usually lower speeds result in safer roads, and then improve signage for drivers as well. So as mentioned, we wanted to touch a little bit about this report that Haas and Associates has put together and is available on the website. Just really kind of want to clear the air on that a little bit. I think some people maybe have read it and maybe misinterpreted what it is. So really it's a document to determine the budget for the project. So kind of look at a couple of different conceptual projects on one end of the spectrum and on the other end of the spectrum to really understand what the real scope of it is in terms of cost mainly. And then with that, knowing kind of the different costs that we could have with this project, project out the phasing for the project based on the anticipated project funding mechanism, which is through a state grant. So there's some talk in there about road widths and things of that nature, but that's really just so that we can understand kind of a high end of what the project could be and a low end for what the project could be. It's not a design. It's, as Joy mentioned, we're still very much in the conceptual phase and need input from the community and so forth. So the final point here is that this is still a draft document. We're in the conceptual stage. This is a draft document. It is not finalized yet, and we are also not in preliminary design yet. So there's still a lot to happen before things really get moving on this project, and certainly input from the public is very important and necessary. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sam.
Good evening, everyone. So the pavement along the Lakeshore Drive exhibits visible signs of aging, as shown in the photo, with multiple types of surface distress, including reflective cracking. According to the town officials, the road was last paved in the 1990s, and prior to that, the original concrete pavement appears to have been, it has been paved over time. And reflective cracking occurs when cracks or joints in the underlying pavement layer, typically concrete or asphalt, when it propagates upwards through the asphalt overlay. And it's termed reflective because the crack mirrors the distress in the underlying pavement. That makes it, it reduces the drive quality and the durability of the road. And in addition, differential settlement resulting from the variation in the base material across the road cross-section contribute to this type of crack. Once the crack form, moisture infiltrates into the crack, and because of the freeze-thaw cycle, the road deteriorates further and further, and it reduces the ride quality and shortens the pavement's service life. Next slide. Now, core samples were obtained along Lakeshore Drive, and it confirmed the presence of concrete underlayment along the roadway. However, the lateral extent of this concrete underlayment was not verified and has not been verified. As you can see, we have 3 representative core samples that are shown on the screen. We can see the first one shows about 7 inches of concrete, and you can visibly see that the asphalt has been overlaid over time, and that is the same with the second one with the broken up concrete underlayment that probably will reflect and cause reflective cracking on the surface. And the third layer, coring does not really show so much of the concrete. So that's how it's varied along Lakeshore Drive. And also, more than 50 cross sections were measured along the road corridor from stop 13 to 31, revealing roadway width that varies between 17.5 and 25 feet, with the average road width of 19.3 feet. The roadway is currently being shared by motorists and the vulnerable road users, and currently, as we all know, there is no continuous sidewalk along the corridor. And I will turn it over to Ryan to talk more about the technical standards that is relevant to this project.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So before we kind of get into some more of the details about pavement strength, pavement durability options, and some of the functional options that are available for the road, we just want to touch a little bit about on technical standards. So we kind of think of these in two different categories, some of which are requirements that must be adhered to, and then others are sort of guidelines. So some of the standards that we need to adhere to include Indiana code, local code, that'd be Town of Long Beach code, the guidance in the manual on uniform traffic control devices. That really is a federal requirements for all of the states, and it talks about signage, lane markings, lane widths, things of that nature. And then naturally the Americans with Disabilities Act, which really just governs how roads are designed for people with disabilities. But then we also have other standards, more like guidelines that are not necessarily, do not necessarily have to be adhered to for this particular road. So this may include things like the Indiana Department of Transportation Design Manual, which would be very applicable and need to be adhered to if this were like a state road, like a highway. But in this case, that's not what we have here. We have a local road. Another one would be the AASHTO Green Book. AASHTO stands for the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That's a very detailed, highly regarded, nationally applicable standard for how to design all kinds of different roads, from highways all the way down to local roads. So a very useful document and helpful, but does not need to be adhered to strictly for this particular road. And then similar to the AASHTO guidelines is guidelines produced by NACTO, which stands for National Association of City Transportation Officials. And that's really more geared towards like urban environments, and is kind of more of a forward-looking perspective about the complete streets, which I alluded to a little bit before. So kind of as we move into some more of the functional possibilities for this road, it's important to kind of take into consideration what classification of this road is. So depending on who you might ask, it might be classified differently. To illustrate that, INDOT classifies this as a minor arterial road, which arterial roads, even if they're minor, you have also major arterial roads, but they're generally higher volume roads with higher speeds, meant really to get people from point A to point B. And then if you were to look at how AASHTO would classify this, they would tend to classify this more as a rural collector road. And I know this is not in the rural area, but that's still how it would be classified. So quite a difference there in terms of how they would consider it. In our minds and how we're kind of looking at this from a design standpoint, we're thinking of this road as like a major collector. You have like your local roads out in front of your house, and then maybe those feed into a little bit of a larger road. Then those roads kind of dump into Lakeshore Drive. And so that's where we think of that as more of a major collector that feeds out to Castleton or Moore Road. Those are more of kind of arterial roads. Traffic volume on this road has been measured by INDOT, and it's approximately 1,200 vehicles per day. That's an average value for a given day, and it averages out highs that you might see in the summer and lows that you might see in the winter. So it's an average value, but useful for comparing it to other roads. So with that, we're going to kind of move in and talk a little bit about pavement strength and durability and what kind of options are available to the town to improve the quality of the road. And then after we get through that, we'll talk more about some of the functional elements of it. So with that, I'll pass this over to Sam, and he can talk to you about the pavement quality.
So 3 pavement improvement options evaluated for Lakeshore Drive. And the first one is milling and paving of the roadway. This option involves milling and resurfacing the existing pavement surface while it provides smooth riding compared to what it is right now, it does not address the non-uniformity of the underlaying. The estimated service life for this treatment is approximately 5 to 10 years. The second option that is being considered is the base strengthening. That is the adjacent base that is adjacent to the concrete underlayment, strengthening it with good base material and then resurfacing the road while also reinforcing the asphalt layer. And this is actually more durable than the first option that I presented. The service life is estimated to be between 10 and 15 years. And the last option, which is a premium option, is the complete removal of the existing concrete on the underlayment and replacing it with a good base material. And this option will be the most durable of the three options, and the service life is estimated to be between 20 and 30 years if this option is taken. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan to talk about the functional improvement options.
Okay, so we're going to talk here about a few different things regarding how this road will sort of be designed and how it will function, starting with lane widths. So under certain circumstances, narrower lanes can promote lower speeds, which in turn reduce crash severity. That's especially true when the road speed is around 30 to 35 miles per hour. In this case, the road speed is 20 to 25 miles per hour. And in that circumstance, there's not any statistical evidence that the lane width actually has an effect on crash intensity or frequency. Really, the controlling element there is the speed and not the lane width. So in our case here, the decision really is about more about maintainability and how best to kind of use the limited right-of-way that's available to the community. So there's some different options to consider when thinking about lane width. 9-foot lanes are a possibility, although they're really kind of too narrow for this particular corridor, especially given some of the construction and maintenance vehicles that tend to occupy the road. 9-foot lanes can also be somewhat problematic for snowy climates, and this area, as you know, can be subjected to sometimes lake effect snow. So for those reasons, 9-foot lanes is not really a preferred option. 10-foot lanes is more preferable. It's kind of a balance, and it has a better ability to accommodate some of those bigger vehicles. Also gives a little bit more space for those vulnerable road users. Again, doesn't limit access for essential vehicles. 11-foot lanes are, you're starting to get up there a little bit. There's not a lot of added benefit there, especially if you're not a heavy truck freight route or a bus route. And, as you start to increase those lane widths, you can tend to have a little bit more comfort for the drivers, which can make them feel a little bit like they might want to go a little bit faster, which again can kind of increase the frequency of crashes. So town's kind of leaning towards 10-foot lanes right now, but that's really just a placeholder and waiting to get input on all these different topics from the community and make final decisions as we go. So next concept here is center line markings. As you can see here, everyone's familiar with these. They're actually optional for this type of road. In this context, you don't need to have it. So one option is to not even put a center in there at all. That has some different trade-offs. It can encourage slower speeds for drivers because it kind of creates a sense of ambiguity about what's happening in the roadway, which can heighten driver awareness and cause them to drive more cautiously, which usually results in lower speeds for the vehicles, and lower speeds usually result in less crashes. It's also, it's best suited for a lower volume road, which this happens to be. So it's a potential option. Another option is a double solid yellow line. Those are meant to really prevent any passing of vehicles. And you might do that in areas where there's a lot of curves in the road, or there's higher speeds, or it's just dangerous. That's not really applicable on Lakeshore Drive. As you know, it's a very straight road and there are not very many vertical curves. So it's kind of a restrictive, and almost you could say too restrictive. Sometimes if you're driving on a road with this in the center line of the road, you may actually believe that you're not able to move across that line, and that can actually be detrimental to the safety of vulnerable road users, because the driver may feel that they can't actually go over that line, even though maybe they can. So it could actually have some negative impacts. Option C is a dashed yellow line, and this is good to use when you have adequate sight distance and people can actually pass. It's also, I think, applicable on a road where you have lower speeds, and so it can help give people a little bit more flexibility in terms of maneuvering around obstacles, and doesn't have that downside of the double solid line where drivers might feel like they can't maneuver around obstacles. So it's kind of a good balance between the other two options. And I should say too that these center line markings, any of them the double solid yellow line or the single dashed yellow line, they serve to help drivers kind of just see where they're at in the roadway. So it helps drivers mainly for that purpose. So kind of moving our way out, we'll talk a little bit about edge lines here. Those are the solid white lines that you sometimes see on a road. Again, which you'll kind of see a pattern here for this kind of a lower volume, lower speed, local residential road. These are optional. So there's some options that we have here. Similar to the center line, we could do no edge marking at all. This, again, kind of creates an environment of ambiguity for the drivers, which causes them to drive a little bit more cautiously, which usually results in lower speeds and less crash frequency. Helps to create that shared space feel, and in a road corridor like this, where you're expecting a lot of different users in that road, it can help again to just slow down drivers and lower crash frequency. Trade-off, though, naturally, is that there's a little bit less visibility for drivers, especially if there are things that are close to the road that they could potentially strike with the vehicle. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. Option B, just continuous edge line all the way along the entire corridor. That would, in contrast to the previous option, would provide very good guidance to the drivers, but it could actually create a little bit too much of a comfortable feeling for them, which can tend to increase the speeds. So it also increases the cost. You've got more stripes to maintain out there. So there's some downsides to this option. Option C, and I think as you'll see, most of what we're talking about, we're end up with kind of a tailored approach. That's what this unique corridor really demands. A one-size-fits-all solution isn't typically going to work for this road. But similarly, selective application of this edge marking could be helpful here to help guide users, motorists around obstacles that are close to the road. It's also useful when used in conjunction with a shoulder. So the line helps keep drivers' tires away from the edge of the road. When they start driving over the edge of the road, it can start to deteriorate that edge, start to crumble. Then water can intrude. And as Sam mentioned before, you can have that freeze-thaw cycle, which is really just like a positive feedback loop that doesn't stop, and the road just deteriorates year after year after year. So keeping people off the road edge is helpful. But maybe not in all cases, as we'll see and talk about shoulders next year. A selective approach probably seems like the best approach here. So going hand in hand with the edge lines are the shoulders, as I was mentioning before. out here in this corridor, we have a lot of driveways and like paved parking areas that really sort of function as a shoulder. And the purpose of a shoulder really is to confine and laterally support the road edge so that it doesn't have a tendency to kind of spill out, especially under pressure from vehicle tires. So right now there's a lot of locations where we already have that lateral confinement and lateral support, but there are some edges that where there's just like grass or vegetation, and it becomes a little bit unclear where the edge of the road is, and that's when you can have drivers start to run over that edge. So in those locations, it may actually be helpful to put in a shoulder. So again, multiple options here for shoulders, no shoulders at all. That's a lower cost. That's going to preserve that kind of narrow beach feel to the road, but it's not going to provide as much or any protection for that edge, which is really kind of a protection of your investment, if you want to think of it that way. Another option is to provide continuous shoulders everywhere, but that's really not that necessary given how many driveways, the density of driveways, the density of parking areas out there. Those are already kind of helping protect the edge of the road. So providing a continuous shoulder isn't really necessary out here. And, you know, as I mentioned before, kind of a middle ground probably is the best bet. Selectively placing new shoulders where we have, you know, vegetation or dirt or gravel adjacent to the road, really just, again, to help protect that edge and keep drivers away from that edge. But it wouldn't be everywhere, just in kind of locations like you can see over here in this picture to the right. It's kind of a good example of where a shoulder might be useful.
This beautiful knee brace. Inside knee brace, you'll see this silk smooth inner sleeve.
So finally, before we look at a couple of just kind of conceptual exhibits of possible ways that the road could look out there, we want to talk about lateral offset. AASHTO defines the lateral offset as a desirable distance from the edge of the travel lane. You could think of that as the white line, or if there's not a white line, it's just the edge of the lane, wherever that may be, to the nearest vertical object, such as like a power pole or a retaining wall or a mailbox or any kind of vertical object that could be a hazard for vehicles to strike. So just the lateral offset is sort of an elimination of those types of objects within that offset distance, and it just helps provide a buffer between vehicles and those objects, and provides a little bit extra space for snow storage and maintenance access as well. With this particular corridor, we know there's a lot of encroaching private property that will limit the ability to achieve the desirable lateral offset clearance. So that's something that I think will definitely have to be a tailored approach on that. But I think the goal here is really to achieve a reasonable amount of separation between the road and these objects while still preserving the corridor character, and not just kind of extruding one lateral offset all the way along the entire corridor and taking out everything that's in the way. So, you know, one option is to take the standard 4-foot lateral offset, which is recommended for this type of road by AASHTO. But, you know, like I said before, that's probably going to be difficult to achieve in many locations just due to that longstanding right-of-way encroachment. So another option, a better option, I think, is the targeted approach, where you kind of think of 4 feet as a desirable goal, and then, you know, kind of look at a cost benefit analysis on, you know, how difficult is it, how impractical, how cost prohibitive is it to remove X, Y, or Z objects out of that lateral offset zone. And maybe in some cases, the town will just have to live with less than 4 feet. But that's really up to the town to decide. And so I think that's something that should be considered by all stakeholders in this project is a minimum lateral offset desirable? Does the town want to state, you know, we will achieve 1 foot or 2 feet of lateral offset everywhere along this corridor, or are they willing to accept 0 feet of offset, or something in between? So it's something to consider. I will say that AASHTO doesn't consider this to be one of the highest priorities, so they do allow for flexibility and engineering judgment on this. So again, I think a tailored approach with this, as with many of these things, will be the best approach. So here's just kind of a depiction of an arbitrary segment of Lakeshore Drive. We intentionally did not put addresses on here because we don't want to single anybody out, and also because you could kind of find this kind of situation anywhere along Lakeshore Drive out there. What you see here is that we don't have a uniform thickness or uniform width of the road along its length, and also the alignment of the road kind of veers back and forth a little bit as you go. You can also see parking very close to the road, adjacent to the road. What we're showing here is if, one of the options that the town can consider is not changing the alignment of the road or the width of the road at all, and just, replace the existing asphalt that's there, and in one of the options for pavement strength and quality improvement, and just leave the alignment and width the way it is, and either add some kind of a center line striping or edge line striping, or none of the above. So this is kind of that initial option. This option just shows 10-foot lanes, like we talked about, 9 foot kind of being ruled out, 11 foot being a little bit too big, 10 foot kind of being the sweet spot. So achieving a minimum 10-foot lane everywhere along the road, also straightening out the alignment. But I think it's important to note that when we go to align this road, it will have to be done in a selective case-by-case basis. We're not just going to put it right down the center of the right-of-way. I don't think that would be the best use of the town's resources. So again, a tailored approach to that alignment will be essential. What we're showing here is just kind of, it could be here, it could be a little to the north, a little to the south. So those decisions will really start to occur when we get into preliminary design. But what we show here is the 10-foot lanes, no shoulder, and the 4-foot lateral offset. So you can kind of see what falls into that area. Again, assuming the town wanted to enforce the 4-foot lateral offset. The next option that we have here is really very similar to this one. The only difference is that we're showing a shoulder. And as I mentioned on that slide, where we're talking about the shoulder and the edge lines, it's really probably best to apply that selectively in certain areas, as in some of these other areas where we already have a lot of impervious, permanent asphalt and concrete surfaces adjacent to the road, you don't necessarily need to have a shoulder there. Kind of redundant. So those are some of the options to consider. And I know I've talked about a lot of different things here. There's a lot of different permutations of the things that we talked about. But certainly I think you can begin to understand there's many different options that the town could choose to do here with this project. And I think that's why the public input will be really important, and see what the community feels is best. And generally too, as I mentioned, given the context of this road being a collector road, a local residential low speed confined right-of-way road, there's not a lot of prescriptive guidance on it. So there's a lot of options and flexibility for the town. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to Sam, and we can kind of pull back and, like I said, talk a little bit more about like the overall project cost, what we're expecting, and then the project timeline as well.
So to date, 4 preliminary improvement options have been considered in this project, with estimated costs ranging from 2.8 million to 5 million. As Ryan mentioned, the first option is just to mill and resurface and leave the alignment as is. And the last option is full reconstruction and functional improvements of the road. These figures are conceptual and intended for budgeting purposes only. They do not include potential costs for the associated utilities, that is relocating of power poles, and it doesn't also take into consideration the soft costs that will be incurred in the project. The town intends to pursue the funding through the Community Crossing Matching Grant program. Over the past 6 years, the town has received approximately $3.4 million in the CCMG award. And the CCMG is an 80-20 matching grant. This means that the town contributes 20% of the construction cost, while the state contributes 80% of the construction cost. So this program is awarded annually, and with a maximum grant award of $1 million. And the next application for this program is the summer of next year, July of next year. If everything holds, the project schedule is anticipated to be thus: commencing the preliminary design this winter and finishing it up before spring. Then the final design should be concluded sometime around the end of spring, ready for the application for the grant. And if everything works out well, the first phase of construction should start in the fall of 2026. Depending on the option that is chosen by the town, this will tell us how many phases, how many years this project would go. I think at this point, we'll turn it over to the town officials for questions.
Okay, we're ready to open up for comments. You're certainly welcome to ask questions, but as you can see, we don't have very many answers right now. If you would please go to the podium and make sure the microphone is on and give your name and address.
It's on.
Oh, okay, comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Would anyone like to get up and make a comment? Please.
Good evening. My name is Dave Miniot, and I live at 2949 Lakeshore Drive. My question is not as much with respect to what's you've planned and so on and so forth. It's really about timing of this, and it goes back to the project of the sewer project. That was a large project that I actually think Haas, you guys were involved with. But that project was a significant project that didn't get approved. And my issue would be that unless that's completely off the table, or not, and those issues haven't solved with respect to the some of the sanitary issues and so on and so forth. Why would we spend money when maybe we have to add those sewers in later? Why not deal with that issue first? That would be number one. Number two, the other comment or that I would have is that if we're going to spend money to widen and to take down and to particularly when it's tight, why not take those power lines down and bury them? where we could remove, we talked about maintenance vehicles and everything else like that. So those would be my two comments ahead. These are more about the timing and whatever. So those are the two considerations. And if someone could answer anything with regard to the sewer project, that would be helpful.
I'll tell you what I can tell you about the sewers. There's no funding
It's time.
for a gravity sewer on Lakeshore Drive. There's no funding anywhere. It's terribly expensive. There are some people, there's moving forward, funding their own low-pressure sewers. And if you ask me, I think that's the trend, the way it's going to go. They don't have to tear up the street. It's directionally bored. And unless we can find some federal money or something for a gravity sewer on Lakeshore Drive. But the truth is, the rest of the town have to be low-pressure sewers probably anyway, because there's no room for lift stations. So the whole town will be a combination of both. Ultimately, I'm a big proponent of sewers for the whole town, but there's just no funding for, to do it at this time. And I hate to miss $1 million on a paving project and then never get a sewer. And I'm going to let Chief Swistek speak to the power lines.
Dave, in recent weeks, I've been working with NIPSCO with one of their senior engineers, Dean Garrett, and I provided him the information on our upcoming project, and they took the 2.3 miles of roadway and then put into their system the amount of utility poles, other infrastructure related to the utilities that we have along the Lakeshore Drive corridor. And we, the town, asked for a ballpark estimate of what it would cost to bury all the utilities along the entire corridor. That estimate came back to the town, would totally be at our expense, is $9 to $15 million to bury all the utilities. Then with that, not all utilities could be buried. There would still be 15 poles along the corridor that need to stay up to ground the underground utilities. In addition to that, Dean Garrett shared with us that there would be multiple 9-foot by 9-foot structures that would need to go in along Lakeshore Drive. And possibly one of those could land in your front yard, which would be a maintenance hub for them to maintenance the underground utilities as well. So he cautioned us that there are pros and cons of putting the utilities underground, but then again, it comes with other infrastructure that we don't already have out there. So we all agreed we would love to bury the utilities out there, but when the cost came back at $9 to $15 million, all at the cost of the town, there's no way we could do it. It's much more than this project. In addition to that, if we request a pole that is in the town's right-of-way currently to be moved for some reason, that is at NIPSCO's cost, not at our cost. However, that is like materials. We can't request the pole to go everything underground. They will replace it with another above ground pole. So, but great question. We did look at it as much as we would like to move forward. We put all this information on the town's website under the Lakeshore Drive Paving Project tab. All the information provided to us from NIPSCO with the summary of that is all on the town's website for everyone to view. To include tonight's PowerPoint, tomorrow morning will be available on the town's website for everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else in the audience?
On Zoom, there are people that would like to ask questions.
Just a minute, we're finishing with the audience first.
We're the audience too.
No, but Zoom always comes after the in-person audience.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike Haggerty, 2513 Lakeshore. As you said, there's a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to yet, so we probably have to go to the next step. But my question is does the town have enough money to pay for all this that's going to come forward? This 20% of whichever number we come up with?
Well, next year's award is $1 million max. So the max the town would come up with was $200,000
Okay.
for next year, and it will have to be done in sections.
And we do have the 200,000 that we could put towards this project?
I'll look to Meg for that, but I believe we do.
Yeah. Maybe Meg touch on the capital plan for the 5-year.
Yes, so the town plans out for 5 years. And every single year, we account for a paving project. The stipulations, it used to be 75-25. Actually, that's what the project we just completed, the town had to pay 25%. The state just changed it where now we pay the 20%, but they also maxed it at the million. So as you saw, our most recent project was 1.2 million. Actually, it was more like 1.6 million. Our 5-year capital plan takes all of the various funds that the town receives tax levy on. There's different funds. There's our MVH, that's the road and street and paving. There's our CEDAT, which is, that one's a 5 cent. There's different calculations that the state performs that determine the levy on many of the funds. The capital plan takes the total. We also have projections that project out by month and year. And we take all of the projects and expenses at the top, and then we see what our funds that are available, and then we keep up on that all year long. And as we project out 5 years, we always know what's available.
When we did the projection, did we do it on the A formula or the D proposal?
So the way, if it ends up at 3 million or 5 million, we again would look at what extra we can afford, but the CCMG is what it is. So we can only be awarded the $1 million, which means we pay 200 each year for the CCMG. So we can't do the entire project in 1 year, for example.
No, I understand that part, but I
Okay,
just want to make sure that we have enough money if we decide to go with the D project.
we would, yes.
Okay, all right.
That would be our planning.
Okay, that-
So, and we have to see each year, and already we know which projects take precedence and which are a lesser need or want for the town. So we are constantly assessing what we can afford.
So if we went with the deep project and then we might possibly have to cut some money out for some other program that we were thinking of.
Possibly.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, that answers my question.
Mike, just this year, they changed a couple of things with CCMG. There used to be 2 applications or 2 calls a year. So cities and towns could get up to $2 million a year. The state of Indiana has now changed that where we're only allowed 1 application, 1 million a year. If we were allowed under the old plan, this would obviously go much faster. We would probably apply for 2 million a year, but it's unfortunate the state has changed it. That's why we're wanting to get our application in for next year, because we don't know what the state could change 2-3 years from now. We were surprised when they changed it to 1 call a year when it used to be 2. So it kind of explains on this year, we received more than $1 million, but that's because we were able to apply up to 1.5 million on that 1 call, right?
Oh,
Sam?
I understand that. I think everybody understands that. My only question was, do we have enough money to go with, say, the D project?
Sure.
That's all. And I understand everything changes and no.
Yeah. But no, Budget and Finance Committee, as Clerk Collins stated, they've got a 5-year plan and a capital plan. It is funded by tax dollars coming in from motor vehicle highway and all the other funds she spoke
good.
of. So
All right, that's
Yep.
thank you.
welcome.
And because of the timing of the next call, we are not going to be able to pave next year. So that year would be heavier on engineering costs, planning this project. And then hopefully, because we don't want to miss out on these paving years, because we can't pave all on our own without the state funds. So you also have to think of it that way.
I just wanted to add one comment too that might just kind of overarch over any discussions about the construction and the phasing. I think the town's plan is to start with the first phase being at like stop 13 and move eastward with the phases. And I don't know if we talked about that yet or not, but I just wanted to bring it up and make everyone aware.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Kevin Higdon. I live at 16 07 Lakeshore Drive. And I'm also here, my mom and dad live at 2815 Lakeshore Drive on top of the hill there. I have two questions regarding the grandfathering of encroachments. Will there be consideration of the grandfathering of encroachments, and how far back do you go? And then the other aspect of that, what are we currently doing to ensure that there's, encroachments aren't happening now? Because it just seems like there's, even this summer, encroachments that have occurred as part of the construction that goes on.
Well, I would just say that there's encroachments everywhere on Lakeshore Drive because the town owns 50 feet and the street is only at the widest 25.
I think when Ryan stated earlier, the phases will all be tailored approach. So after the survey work's completed and the initial preliminary work's done, they're just going to have to look at every block as we go through the project. And like Ryan said, we are starting, our plan is at stop 13 because the pavement is in worse condition to our western end of the town than if we were to look at stop 31, the pavement's in a little bit better shape down there. Not much better, but it is somewhat better.
And I would just add too, I think with regard to, the alignment and the width of the road, I don't think the town's goal at all is to just go out there and take down a bunch of the encroachment. I think that's very costly too. I think a tailored approach is really necessary. And if there's a way to get the improved road and the improved road functionality in there without having to do that, that's probably a preferable approach. But that's really, the specifics of that are going to be like block by block, and we won't know what that looks like and where, there's talk about maybe relocating this wall or this pole or, this other obstruction until we get into preliminary design and look at a preliminary road alignment, et cetera. So
I'd like before.
Can't you have to talk in the mic, otherwise people on Zoom can't hear.
Let me restate my last question, so make sure it's answered. So what are we doing to stop current encroachments that are potentially happening?
I don't think we have a replace and repair thing so people can encroach to where they've encroached before if they're just replacing it, and that's what they do.
One of the examples in recent winters, our plow trucks are on Lakeshore Drive, which can be a very difficult road to maintain with the winds off of the lake. One of our plow truck drivers struck a large boulder that was encroaching into the town's right of way. It was right up on the edge of Lakeshore Drive. And when you're in a total whiteout trying to plow Lakeshore Drive, our plow struck that boulder and caused significant damage to the plow truck. Took the plow truck out of service. And then we had to do, I think it was about $2,000 in repairs to the plow truck. We go back, we contact those owners, and we have those encroachments moved in that, because sometimes people sneak things in under the darkness of night, and we've got to go and tell them, look, you can't have that right up against Lakeshore Drive. So again, to Kevin's question, I think we're just going to have to look at it again, a tailored approach, home by home, and just address some of these that are right on Lakeshore Drive's edge to make sure that we've got room to push that snow to keep the road safe for all of us. So just an example.
May I talk? Michael Athens, we own 13, my wife and I, Stephanie, own 13, 17, 15, 11, and 07 on Lakeshore Drive. Some of that is vacant land. One, I'd like to say, it seems like it'd be remiss not to do the sewers. I know I heard you don't have the money, but my God, if you're tearing up all this roadway, it seems like it should be part of the plan to somehow wait or figure out how to be able to finance sewers. And then the other thing is, I can appreciate the tailored approach. That does make the most sense. My fear is that because I have vacant land on Lakeshore, that the road will go like that, and that doesn't seem fair. So I imagine, or I hope that it would be some kind of fair way of taking from both sides. And we're tearing a house down to give for more green space, so I don't want it to go to asphalt in particular.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Carter Ellens from 2721 Lakeshore Drive. Don't have a question, but comment and a suggestion. The comment is simply thank you. The communication's terrific. The website documents posted, having a meeting like this, it's exactly how a major project should be done. And I appreciate that because it takes intention and effort. And so thank you all that are involved in making that happen. The suggestion I have is there's like 4 or 5 goals for the project. I would encourage you to do the hard work of prioritizing those goals. They're all important, but if you put them in a hierarchy, when it goes time to make the decisions, it'll be easier for you to make the decisions. And when you're communicating to us what decisions you've made, it'll be easier for you to communicate why you've made them. If you know these are all important, but when push comes to shove, this goal is more important than that goal, that one's more important than that goal. So that's my suggestion. I hope it's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
John Mengel, 1508 Lakeshore Drive. Just a few comments. An awful lot of the bad road surface are bad repairs to where the road's been torn up for various construction projects. And these holes sit open forever and ever, and trucks going over them just break the corners off further and further. So a lot of the degradation of the road surface is self-inflicted by all of us. You know, so it's the next piece I'd encourage is our areas where the last 2 repayments have just been piled on top. We should mill down and get back down to a reasonable level. Beyond that, I guess a few other comments, and I'd offer these in interest of supporting the altruistic goal of making the town safer. But wider streets will encourage higher speeds. Wider streets are going to put moving cars closer to houses, parked cars, and pedestrians. For the most part, right now on the street, and this is years ago, but I did a pretty exhaustive study on the average position of a car in Lakeshore Drive when it's there by itself. By and large, people defensively drive down the center of the street and then tactically separate when they're going by other cars or pedestrians, bike riders, whatever it is. So I'd caution that let's not try to fix a problem that maybe is not really quite there. Wasn't that long ago, but maybe it was a few years ago, 10 years ago. We have an ordinance that says houses need to have a requirement of having parking for 3 cars. Depending on how wide you go, there are going to be houses on Lakeshore Drive that will no longer have that. Because right now they're parking this way, and now you're gonna have to turn the car this way. So all of a sudden, what do? Poles are gonna be an issue. Mailboxes are gonna be an issue. Things like aesthetics should be a concern as to what happens here and there and everywhere. And that's about all I have, but there's a whole bunch of more stuff on here, but maybe isn't quite relevant yet until you get a little bit further into design mode. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else?
My name is Lori Stinson and I'm from Stop 1516. We've had a house in our family for 5 decades, so we've seen a lot of changes in Long Beach. First, I want to thank the council for listening to our concerns about this project. I am against it though, however, because if you're really worried about consistency of wider roads, there didn't seem to be any need in Michigan City or Dunedin Beach to widen Lakeshore Drive. So how does the widening of only 2.35 miles in Long Beach create any consistency? And in fact, we know can increase speeds and be less safe. The same people that bike, walk, and ride along the road they go well beyond stops 13 and 31. So we have one chunk that's going to be one way, but no consistency on either side. So I hear consistency a lot, just something I wanted to share. And from a safety perspective, I know John just mentioned this, that most drivers, and we see it because we've got a porch right there in the front, so we see that traffic all the time, that drivers defensively move over walkers and runners, and they go down the center until the conditions require. So changing it, people are still going to do that. They're not going to stay in their lane. They're going to go around nicely as people do on Lakeshore Drive to avoid the walkers and the runners. The widening of LS Lakeshore Drive would also place some private properties, because we know some houses are different distances, but much closer to the vehicle traffic, which I think would be perilously dangerous for homeowners, especially children, elderly, disabled, pets, and personal property. You know, I really don't want my grandchildren to be exposed to those dangerous elements in moving the traffic closer to our front door. And some of us, I'm hoping, can relate to having a situation like that. You also had asked consideration that the damage and disturbance widening will do to existing vegetation, driveways, brickwork, and loss of parking. As John said, I don't know if you don't have a place to park your car, what's the solution you're going to give homeowners? You have 3 spots, now I have 1. Lastly, I'd ask the council to consider the voices of those homeowners that would be the most impacted by the widening of Lakeshore Drive. I do, however, wholeheartedly endorse repairing or reconstruction of Lakeshore Drive, since it's not been done as the 1990s, as we heard, and isn't just in dire need of so many divots and holes and uneven pavements. Making streets more stable versus widening will equate to our safer roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience?
Yeah, 63 on Zoom.
Hi, Mary Keene from Step 20. So I too appreciate the transparency on this so far. Where do we go from here? How is this decision made? How much farther are we going to be involved in your decision making?
Well, the engineers are going to take your comments from tonight, and from all of your comments tonight, they're going to include that in how they make their recommendation to the town.
And then do you come back to us and go over that, or?
Well, if you want another workshop, but everything we have is on the website. So everything we have, you can see.
Uh-huh.
And that's going to continue.
So there's going to be open dialogue until the decision's
Absolutely. You
made.
can contact us anytime if you have questions.
Okay.
Or concerns. You can email the Town Council 2025 and someone will get back to you.
Great, thank you.
You can also attend any council meeting. We have public comments at 7 o'clock. And you can stay and listen to the council meetings. We always welcome people there. It is the second Monday of the month. And I just wanted to say that, again, it's a road improvement project. So the last woman who was at Stop 1516, you talked about widening. It's a road improvement project. So the word widening, it's improvement.
Any more comments in the audience?
If I may just add a little bit about the, if I may just add a little bit about, as we get into preliminary design, I think that will start to illustrate to the residents a little bit better, like we're actually talking about as the town makes decisions about what they want to do in terms of the lane width. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be the town's decision. Do they want to go with 9? Do they want to standardize 10? That's a decision for the community to make. Same goes for, the line types and the edge lines. And the lateral offset. So a decision will need to be made about that. But once those decisions get made, then we will start to draft the preliminary design. And I think that's when you'll really start to see what things are going to look like and where decisions have to be made on a case-by-case basis. And I would think the town would probably want to have a workshop to kind of review that and let people get eyes on that before you get into the more detailed aspects of design.
One of the suggestions that the police department has made to the project team is as we study the traffic patterns on Lakeshore Drive and a lot to do with traffic control, as we enter our community from the western end at stop 13 and you travel east, the last stop sign that you stop at is stop 9 in Michigan City at Turner Court. So from stop 9, the next stop sign is at stop 20 at Golden Gate. One of the suggestions that we've put forward for consideration is at stop 16 to put in a stop sign to calm the traffic there so that we're slowing the traffic, because a lot of times what we hear is we often will stop somebody at stop 20, run in a stop sign, and they'll just go, I wasn't paying attention. I was looking off to the lake. I didn't see the stop sign, and they run that stop sign. That's because they had last stopped all the way back at 9. So we're looking at that as well as a possible suggestion. And then at every one of the beach stops that has access for our community members, we'll be putting in pedestrian crossings, the markings, stop bars at the stop signs. So there'll be additional markings on the roadway pavement as well. And that's part of the safety improvement plan for Lakeshore Drive as well. So just wanted to put that out there. So that's one of the other things being considered.
Thank you.
All right, Sharon Sylvester. We have two houses, 1504 and 1525 Lakeshore Drive. You made the comment very early about sidewalks, but there's nothing in the presentation about sidewalks.
I don't think the town is pursuing any plans for sidewalks. I think largely that's due to the significant encroachment of private property on the very confined right of way.
Okay, I was just questioning that. Was there ever any thought about putting in speed bumps? I don't know if it'd be good or bad, but
I don't either.
no, I like the idea of another stop sign though. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
It's merely a question. My name is Stephanie Athens. I'm at 1317 Lakeshore Drive. You made a comment about this not being a widening, but an improvement. I understand that. What is the current? I've never really gotten out there and measured. What is the current width of Lakeshore Drive, or the average current?
The average is around 19.3 feet. The lowest, the least is 17.5, and the widest is 25.
So then it goes anywhere from about 9 feet to 12 feet about per lane?
No.
Technically, yes.
Okay. And you're anticipating that it won't go above 10 in 10 or 20 feet, right?
That's what we're considering right now.
But that's what's
We
being
don't know, but
considered.
that-
We don't know. I
that was
understand
just
that.
preferred.
Yeah, but that's one of the recommendations. That was one of the preferences.
Yeah, that's
10
one
and
of
10.
the options that are being considered right now, 10-10, yeah.
Okay. And where is that measured from the center? And what is considered the center? 10 feet out from either? I really don't know.
Right now, that will be decided during the preliminary engineering. That's when we will decide what the center will look like. But we are prioritizing not, going into existing structures as much as possible, and trying to make it such a way that, we don't go into so much encroachment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Want to respond a little bit as well about that, just because it hasn't come up really until your comment, but I think it's important and relevant to talk about. The center line of the road is not in the center of the right of way. The right of way is not even the same all the way along the length of the road, but you could think of it as maybe 50 feet. So the road typically is a little bit more toward the north. And I think generally that's because there are significant dunes on the south side of the road, whereas on the north side of the road, it typically goes down towards the lake. So you have more retaining walls and things of that nature on the south side. So that kind of pushes the road to the north. So that's just, if you were to just arbitrarily say, well, we want to see the road in the middle of the right of way, you can imagine how much conflict there would be with all of the improvements in the right of way. So I don't think that's the goal. Again, that would be very costly to do that.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Okay, do we have any comments on Zoom?
Yes.
Can you please give us your name and address?
My name is Barbara Moran Goodrich. I'm at 1514, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk to you. There are some concerns. I agree that we definitely need to do some type of resurfacing of our street. And however, I am concerned about increasing the width of the road. There are many reasons why, but one in particular is that currently from where I live, people are actually go much slower, mainly because we have a lot of walkers and bike riders during those seasons, and we have to watch out for them. And so one of my concerns is that if we widen the road, we could either A, have more walkers, I've seen as many as 5 going across the road, and you usually have to stop and wait either till you can get a clearance on the other side of the road or until, there's a stop sign. And so my concern is that one, we'll end up with more walkers going across the road and still be in the same position. And the other concern I have is that my home and many homes on Lakeshore Drive, especially on both sides, had been built prior to the town even existing, and we are very close to the road. And so if you're looking at widening, based on some of the research I've done and some of the reading I've done, it looks like you're looking at mainly, if you do widen to the 12 and 12, which is 24, that you're looking at taking 4 feet on the north side instead of trying to do it evenly. And that concerns me because then vehicles are going to be 4 feet closer to my home and many others that are currently no longer in the, setbacks because our homes were built over 100 years ago. And there's concern about somebody.
Wind it up, Barb.
What?
You have to wind it up. We're at 2.5 minutes.
Okay, so my concern is that people are going to drive faster. People are going to, potentially have more risk. And so I'm concerned about this. I do want to have road improvement, but I don't think widening would be an actual benefit for all of us.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes.
Can you give us your name and address, please?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Eric Scroggins, and we are at 2505 Lakeshore. And I've got just a few comments. I understand there aren't a lot of answers to questions, but I guess I'll give you, our thoughts on what we've heard so far. So, I would say, first of all, one of the things I heard earlier is that, a goal here is preserving the corridor character. There was a comment earlier about prioritizing those goals that would help, the residents understand why you're making decisions. I think that was a great suggestion. And I would offer that, first and foremost, we should be looking at preserving the corridor character as we consider changes or improvements to the road. Second, on the road width, there was a lot of discussion and presentation from the engineers about road width and speed and safety. And it was clear that more narrow roads tend to control speed and provide more safety. Also, as someone asked earlier about current road width, really even going to 10 feet would cause pretty significant widening of the road in many areas. So, I can tell you, from 2505, our perspective is a 9-foot road should be sufficient and would preserve the character of the corridor and would be safe. And I think that's got to be, one of our primary concerns as well. As the engineers walked through several characteristics of roads, they talked about, what tended to be safer and what didn't. And in every instance, no center line, no edge marking, no shoulder minimum offset, all were things that were viewed as being safer, but the recommendation was then something different. And so, from our perspective, we should be considering the things that are the safest and again, preserve the character of the corridor, which right now doesn't have those things. So we would be very supportive of no center line, no edge markings, no shoulder, and a minimum offset. I think that really sort of wraps up at least, our comments at this point, and we'll look forward to a process that allows us to comment on where the town ultimately, decides to develop the recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else on Zoom?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Joe Lennon at 2819 Lakeshore Drive. I just want to echo Carter Ellen's comments. You guys have done a wonderful job here, I believe, in presenting all the information. It's really clear. So thank you. Quick question for the chief. Chief, have we had many accidents, crashes on our roads, Lakeshore Drive specifically, I guess?
Over the last 5-year period, our stats include those that may have occurred on Lakeshore Drive in Michigan City just because of the way the county CAD pulls the records. There's been about 20 accidents over the last 5 years.
Okay. Anything with any major bodily harm or fender benders?
Some minor personal injury. Most of them are property damage. And then I think in total we had about 600 and some traffic stops over 5 years as well for traffic enforcement, but no major incidents of, injury along Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah. And I guess, I've been here humbly close to 60 years, and I can't ever remember anyone getting in a really bad accident on Lakeshore Drive. So I do think there's something to the narrow lanes that leads to defensive driving a little bit, and people are aware. And as I'm sure Chief, some will speed no matter what you do, right? So you got to deal with that. But by and large, I think it is actually an asset to protect folks versus a liability. The first thing. And then the second thing I just wanted to bring up is I think everybody needs to be aware that, I think you talked about earlier, but having to reapply for these grants every year, there's risk in that, right? So you could start this and they could turn off the spigot in a year. So you just got to be ready for that, or they could lower the amounts or whatever. But there's risk in executing over multiple years if you can't get the guarantee up front, which I know you can't. It's just the way it is. But just something to look out for. And then the last thing is, and Chief, we talked about this before, but if you're talking about markings, I would really encourage you, a part of this project, to put down markings for which side of the road you walk on and which side of the road you ride on. You ride on the right, you walk on the left. And people don't be able, if we could enforce that a little more, put some markings, I think it would help with the pedestrian issues we have in June and July. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes. My name's Camille Fernandez. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
My address is 1529 Lakeshore Drive, and my family's been there for a very long time, over 100 years. But one of my questions is, in recent decades, we joke that Lakeshore Drive becomes the second lake, because in front of my family's home, we cannot go out the front to Lakeshore Drive down our front steps because it is just a lake. It's our whole area. We have an area that you can park in front, but it's just flooded. It's just completely flooded, and you can't walk there for many weeks out of the year. So I didn't know if in the resurfacing or rebuilding project, they're going to address that as well. because we have a sewer in front, but it's not really a sewer because it just fills up with sand. And then they come out every once in a while and suck the sand out, but it doesn't really ever correct the problem.
Camille, we walked the area out front of your home, and our street superintendent, Tom Dolph, does have that location marked out with our engineering team. There are several areas in the 14 and 1500 block of Lakeshore Drive that will have to put in some storm water infrastructure. So that will be included in this project as part of the overall improvement plan.
Perfect. I just didn't hear that in their presentation. So thank you. And I thank you for giving everybody a chance to speak.
Thank you, Camille. Anyone else on Zoom?
I'd like to speak. Sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on Zoom. I can't figure it out.
I see your hand.
Okay, perfect. Well, first, my name's Bridget Kennedy. I'm at 2223 Lakeshore Drive, and I wanted to thank you guys for not only doing this in person, but on Zoom as well. It definitely helps to hear what everybody has to say and to hear what you guys are doing. I just want to just get my voice heard too, that I'm also against expanding the road. Our home is in a unique position. I know one gentleman spoke about how each house should have 3 parking spots. My house maybe has 2. We are very close to Lakeshore Drive. It's an older home. And if we widen the street, my parking is completely shot because we don't have it's unusual, but for some reason behind my house, there's an alley that stops at my neighbor's house. So I have no alley. My next door neighbor doesn't have an alley, but then it continues after that. So we're not able to park behind our house like everyone else on my block. What I'd like to see is the town, in an effort to alleviate traffic, I would love to be able to park my car behind Lakeshore Drive. I'm going to have to, for sure, if they expand the road, because I will not be able to park my car or any car there. So I just want to take that. I know that it's been talked about with the village, or I'm sorry, with the town. I know my neighbor has brought it up. I know it's something that is being at least talked about. But I think it's an important issue that, we have to look at other ways to alleviate the traffic. One of them, this is to me a no-brainer, to have the town continue that alley if they expand the road on Lakeshore Drive. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yes. Hi, Abby Neary, 2019 Lakeshore Drive. Thank you for hosting the session, and thank you to everyone who's spoken so far. A couple of items I just would like to ask questions on and also note. While I think most of the residents out here are in agreement with repaving it, there is a petition circulating and 117 signatures against widening it. I know that in the town council meeting, it was cited that the reason for part of this project was reducing encroachments on the public right. My question for the council is, there has been no precedent for this. There have been other repaved streets within the town over the last couple of years. There's no precedent for this. You've also allowed for dozens of homeowner improvement projects over the last 5 years in areas where there have been encroachments. So again, that's setting a precedent that this is allowing homeowners to spend their own private money to do so. The other thing, I know you indicated how we're funding or talked about how we're going to fund the 20% and the budgeting. What I'd like to see in this next draft is any cost estimates for the trees, fire hydrants, mailboxes, yards, retaining walls that will also have to be taken down, presumably by the city, but then of course paid for by the private homeowners. Obviously, you won't have those costs for the repair. But would like to see how those funds are incorporated into it as well in the planning phase, because that does tend to complicate things. My last couple of comments are, I appreciate Chief, thank you. I had noted some alternatives. I think it's great that we'd put in crosswalks and more stop signs. Because as you know, people often, as you've stated, people often roll through those, and then it's a clear demarcation. And then my last comment is, we've spent a lot of money on stormwater improvement projects and stop improvement projects, particularly at steps 23 and 22 recently. And I'm kind of a nerd, but I went out there with a measuring tape and all of those projects would actually have to be redone again. So I'd ask that the town even make that transparent in the financial considerations when projecting for the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Anybody else on Zoom?
Yeah, hi, Mary O'Neill, 1532 Lakeshore Drive. What is the deadline to finalize this plan to apply for the grant? I was at an earlier budget workshop that the council held, and I believe the council was told they had to make a decision by December to apply for this grant. Is that accurate, or is there what is the hard and fast deadline if you want to have a chance to get this CCMG grant?
July, the first phase is going to be July of 2026, the ending of July. The grant application opens up on the 1st of July, 2026, and it closes on the 31st of July. So you have from the 1st to the 31st of July to apply for the grant.
Okay, so there's no reason for them to make a town council to make a decision in the December meeting.
I don't believe anyone said that, but no.
Well, look at the old Zooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Anyone else on Zoom? Okay, hearing none.
I have one. I also can't raise my hand.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm Abby Mack. I live at 2121 Avondale Drive. I have young children who live in the neighborhood, and my concern is primarily about speed and safety. This summer, we were trying to teach my son to ride a bike, and it felt very nerve-wracking having him try to ride on Lakeshore Drive. Contractor trucks are always speeding through the area. I would advocate strongly for more traffic calming devices, in particular speed calming bumps.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Yeah, I don't know how to raise my hand either.
Okay.
CJ Dempsey.
CJ.
CJ Dempsey, 1534 Lakeshore Drive. Thank you for everyone in your input. Joy, I know you were deeply involved in the sewer project that didn't happen, and I know you feel strongly that the town needs sewers. I also feel that way. My comment is, at least in my bubble, there has been no talk about what the town council or anyone has done since that failure to move for a sewer to be installed in Long Beach or Lakeshore Drive. I think it would be helpful for the council to communicate to the residents, maybe in this forum, exactly where we are and what we've done to date to explore raising funds to do it. I think it's that much of an important thing for the town. The values of all of our homes on Lakeshore Drive depend on it. 10% of Lakeshore Drive right now is on pump and haul, and it's only going to increase. We know that. So I do think it's an important thing that needs to be addressed by the council, and I hope that you can do that. And the other thing that I wanted to say, I just want to make sure I'm thinking about this right. With the $1 million cap, if you do plan A, you can do it in 3 years. If you do plan D, it would have to happen over 5 years, correct? Unless the town funded more than 20%?
Yes.
I would just add, those numbers are kind of ballpark order of magnitude budgetary numbers. So yes, that's technically correct, but the project will be tailored to, accommodate the phasing that the town wants to achieve.
Okay. Well, as the money changes from 3 to whatever, or 2 to whatever, whatever the numbers are, you've got $1 million cap per year. Or 1.2 with our investment, correct?
Yes. For next year anyway.
Right, and it could change as it changed this year. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that, because that's a big factor when deciding how much money we're going to spend going into this project.
Okay,
That's
thank you,
it.
C.
Yep.
Thanks, CJ. Anyone else on Zoom? One more chance for the audience. Okay.
Just based on the timing of, well, Bill Loftus, I'm at 2600 Hermione Trail. Based on the timing you outlined of the July, what level of engineering is required to apply for the grant?
For the grant application, we need to get at least very close to the final design, so that whatever we are applying for, it will not blow the budget, or it's not going to be, actually is highly discouraged by the state to apply for what you have not really.
So it requires basically an 80% complete final engineering
Exactly.
set.
Yeah, about
Which,
that.
and that probably takes months to provide. So
Right.
then has the surveying of the Lakeshore Drive begun?
We are working with the town right now to get that started, but it has not begun yet.
So really, you're up against it for a mid-September grant if you need final engineering. I was kind of hoping the answer was preliminary engineering or 20% complete.
We are hoping to get the survey done this year and start the preliminary engineering before the end of the year.
Okay, and then you were kind enough to share the estimates, and are there contingencies associated with that? Some of the comments from the audience were about these ancillary items that weren't really covered or just shown to this group at this time.
Yeah, we have contingencies in the estimate.
And with the extended period of the 5-year period, is there an escalator attached to the 5-year phasing program or the 6-year program in those estimates as well?
At this moment, there is not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none. Does anybody up here want to make a comment? Okay, thank you everyone for coming. We'll keep you informed via the website. We'll have another workshop after the engineers do all their analysis, and thank you all very much.